the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our family and our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again.
Welcome to our monthly AAA podcast, Affinity, Allie, and Annette, on the road to good storytelling with your hosts, Allie Spooner and Annette Morey.
Welcome. I'm Allie Spooner, and I write with Affinity. With over 30 published titles, I touch on many genres, from romance to paranormal. I have numerous series, and lately I've focused more on writing short stories and standalone books. I hope you enjoy our podcast and have an opportunity to meet new authors and to learn more about your favorites. We appreciate your support and invite you to visit Affinity Rainbow Publications to check out our books.
Hi, and I'm Annette Morey, also with Affinity Rainbow Publications. I'm pretty sure I've settled into a brand of kind of quirky, unconventional style of writing, which definitely gives my publisher fits. After 30 published novels, I still feel like I have a lot to learn from others, which I hope our guests help illuminate us both and give us new tools and techniques and new ways of looking at Sapphic books. I'm also very fortunate to have a small but very loyal group of readers, and I appreciate that. And I always want to thank my readers for that.
All right. Each month, we invite a special guest to join us as we discuss various topics of interest to writers and readers. We'll invite our guests to do a short reading and then follow with questions on the featured topic while encouraging them to do at least one giveaway to our audience.
This month, we'll be talking about books with heart-wrenching drama. We feel very lucky to have author Anne Gardner with us today. After a 5-year wait, that's a long time, Anne's latest book, Breath of Scandal, will have everyone clamoring to purchase it.
Following our podcast, we'll upload to a newly created YouTube channel and hope you consider subscribing so you never miss a future podcast.
So with a vast array of varied experiences, Anne has a wide array of story ideas that she often weaves into riveting storylines that take the reader on some unexpected rides. She has lived all over the world and is now permanently living on the East Coast of the United States, although she does like to travel. She has a love that fills her heart and children who fill her life. She works in the field of finance and, of course, is a published author. Her published works include Pour Amour, For the Love of a Woman, An Affair of Love, Till There Was You, Cold and Lonely, Lovely Work of Art, The Very Thought of You, Absolution, In the Silence of the Unspoken, Compensation, and her latest novel, which I'm very excited to hear a reading on, A Breath of Scandal. She enjoys sailing, horseback riding, art, traveling, reading, and writing. Her family, her friends, and her music fill her life in a world that is her own.
So, without further ado, Anne, you're on. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much, and I'm so glad to be here. I thought that I would read a little bit, a excerpt of my new book, and I hope you enjoy it. In trying to pick this piece, I tried very hard to kind of give you an idea where the book is going, but at the same time, not giving too much away. So here we go. Breathe, Gillian. Dr. de Lampedusa encouraged. I can't. Oh, Gillian was beside herself with pain. Where is she? Dell. She screamed again. It had all happened so fast. Her water broke, and the contractions came quickly one after the other. At that very same moment, a dark-haired woman entered the hospital, followed by 3 men and met by 2 others. Contessa, per favore, this way. One of the men that met her in the lobby guided her as he related all that had been set up for her. We have set aside this elevator for you. She neither acknowledged him nor ignored him. She was used to his kind. It was always the same, an act of kindness she would ultimately get the bill for. This would be no different. That, however, did not matter now. She was glad for the assistance. She would be glad to pay for the courtesy later. When the doors to the elevator finally opened, she had to contain herself so as not to run. Adele had literally walked out of a board meeting, gotten on a jet, and was on her way to the woman that was bearing their child. Nothing and no one could have kept her away. As soon as she entered the delivery room, her whole semblance of aloofness changed. Her features softened as she approached the woman who smiled at her. It's about time, Contessa, Gillian said with a smile. The entourage, always keeping me away, Tesoro. She joked back. It had always been a standard joke between them since they had met. Adele took her hand softly and kissed it. I'm sorry I'm late. This time her eyes were serious. The important thing is that you're here. Oh God, here it comes again. Gillian held on tightly to Adele's hand. Adele looked horrified at the doctor. Do something, she begged. Okay, Gillian, let's get this baby born. Push, Gillian, push. The doctor encouraged her. Oh, come on, Gillian, you can do it, cara mia, just push. Adele encouraged her as well. I see the head, Gillian. Push hard so that this baby can enter the world. Dr. de Lampedusa smiled and looked back down again. Here it comes. Gillian screamed and clung to Adele's hand for dear life. A few seconds later, the room was filled with the cries of their daughter, Caterina Kendall Visconti. Kendall had been added for Gillian's beloved grandmother, whom she had loved deeply. Adele stared at the child, unable to believe how one human being could be so perfect. The birth of her son had been a difficult one, and in the end, she had been sedated. This was so different. The whole experience of seeing the birth had left her in awe. The beauty of her daughter left her, for once in all her life, speechless. The doctor turned over to her and handed her the child wrapped in a white blanket. Here is your daughter, Contessa. He smiled at Adele. She looked down at the little human she held in her arms, and her eyes filled with tears. Adele walked over to Gillian, handed her the baby, and locked eyes with the woman she obviously adored. Gillian held her baby as she smiled at her and cried at the same time. She counted the fingers and the toes and thought her to be the most beautiful little girl she had ever seen. Adele leaned down and kissed her temple tenderly. Gillian looked up at Adele. She's perfect. Yes, she is, cara mia. She's perfect. Adele smiled with adoration at the infant in Gillian's arms. She looks like you, Gillian said dreamily, and suddenly she began to look drowsy. She looks like us. Adele smiled and caressed her face. Gillian. Yes, my love. Gillian looked up at Adele again. Thank you for my daughter. I love you, Gillian, Adele said, not caring who heard her. At that moment, the outside world that she never exposed herself to just didn't exist. Gillian smiled, and all she felt were the lips on her own before she closed her eyes to a well-deserved sleep.
Aw, that's a great reading.
Wonderful. So, a lot of authors go for sort of a light and fluffy kind of romance. Others, like yourself, tackle romance with a touch of darkness, dare I say, and depth, creating that real angst. So it felt like this category that I just made up of heart-wrenching drama really fits your books. Can you tell me what is the inspiration around these books?
I can tell you that it comes from life. Life is not simple, or I should say, life is simple. It's people that complicate it. So I like to see all those things. I look at things in a deeper sense because either you see it, you believe in it, you experience it, it's just life. And sometimes the people kind of walk away from it or don't want to look at it. But at the end of the day, those experiences in a big way shape us, produce our reactions, and make us do things that are incredibly wonderful and incredibly horrible.
True, true.
Where did the idea for A Breath of Scandal come from in particular?
A Breath of Scandal, I put in the a time context in which it is written, because there were a lot of things going on in within our LGBTQ community at the time. Family was being redefined. Rights to children were being questioned. Parenting was being questioned. And there were so many other things going on in the late 80s and early 90s that I always found that time frame incredibly interesting, and in many ways have brought us as a community to where we are today.
Interesting. Yeah. So the last book that you wrote came out in 2017. Is there a reason you took a hiatus from writing for 5 years?
Sometimes I say that I had a dry spell, but honestly, although I'm sure that the dry spell went in there, but life, it was just life. Life got in the way, you know. In those days, our children were getting older. There were new challenges. The family dynamic was changing. There were so many things going on, and I didn't want to miss it. I think people sometimes don't take the time, and they miss those things, and I didn't want to miss it.
So what prompted you or inspired you to start again? I think that you've got some other stuff that's kind of in the works as well, right? And hopefully you'll talk about that.
Yes. What started, I've missed it. I missed the love that I have for writing. And I have to admit that having put it away for so long, it was difficult to start. But when I did, it just started just flooding back, and it felt good, you know, and I realized how much I loved this. So I haven't been able to stop writing since I started again.
Oh, so are you going to give us hints about what you've got in the works?
I have a few stories that I already have finished, actually, that I'm going to be sending on to Julie at Affinity, and hopefully she'll like it. But yes, there's some in particular that I wrote early on that I, for some reason, just hung on to and didn't want to let go of. And you both, as writers, I think will understand that there are stories that we just kind of want to hang on to for some reason. And
Right.
I guess I'm just ready to let go right now, and hopefully, people will enjoy it.
Now, those stories, I'm curious about this because, you know, I only have one story that I hung on to, and it was the very first one that I ever wrote. And recently I've gone back to that, seeing if I could resurrect that and put it in, do something with it to make it readable. And I'm like, I don't know, 30% into it. And it's just shit. And it's like, this is not salvageable at all. So I'm very fascinated about when you wrote these, you know, stories. Was it way back, or have they, you know, how long have you been hanging on to them? Like, do I have hope to turn this one around, or just give up?
Let me tell you, you definitely do, because it's funny that you said that. It is actually the first story I wrote.
Oh, good.
And yes, I went back to it, and I realized that, you know, hopefully I'm a better writer. So there are things that I changed throughout and scenes that I added. But yes, it's the first one. And for some reason, I just hung on to it because it was the first one that actually made me, going through my head, was the one that made me sit down and write it. So for some reason, I don't know why, I just hung on to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just wasn't time for it yet.
Wasn't ready to let go of it.
Yeah.
And honestly, you know what happened? I had a hard time letting go of the characters for some reason.
Yeah.
I couldn't let them go, and in trying to do so, I wrote a couple of other books that kind of got me off that merry-go-round.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. It can be hard to let them go sometimes.
Allie, do you have any in your back pocket that you hung on to that you haven't? Didn't you just resurrect something? I thought I remembered you saying that you went back to something you wrote a long time ago, and
I've got a couple out there. There's one that I really want to do. It's a sci-fi, but it's a lot of world building, and it's just I'm like you. I get to it to a certain point, and it's like, okay, it's time to put this one away again for a while. You know, it's just not something I can sit down and it almost be easier to begin all over again and just write the new book.
yeah, I definitely kind of had that thought.
Yeah. All right. We all know that romance is queen, and your books tend to fall more in fiction or the dark drama category, tackling the hard topics. Does it make it easier or harder to sell versus true romance?
I think like I like to write about things that some may find shocking, but they find it shocking because they don't want to look at it. And it's always for me more interesting. I don't plan a story. Oddly enough, my stories will come that there'll be a scene that will come to me, and I have to build it around that. I'll have to go to the beginning to get to the scene that I'm at. So it's hard to figure out where it's going because it takes a life of its own. And yeah, I find it more interesting. I find more interesting to delve into things that perhaps other people have a hard time feeling.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've read several of your works. Even though they're dark, they would technically, I mean, they probably fit more into fiction category, but they also could fit into the romance category, dark romance, because they always have a happy ending, or happy for now, or whatever you would want to call it. So it does fit that, because I'm, as much as I like unusual and dark and some of those kinds of things, I also got to have my happy ending. I hate it when it doesn't end well, and I think, I've just wasted 8 hours of my life. So sometimes I'll peek at the end. I admit, I'll peek at the end. I'll get like, I don't know, 10% into the book where I kind of know the characters, and then I flip to the back to make sure it's going to be a happy.
But you know what, Annette? That's funny that you say that, because most romances are not like happy, happy, happy all the time. They have sometimes these explosive moments, or somebody else throws a wrench into it, or something that's totally unexpected that comes from either the past or the present, or just derail everything. And that's what happens. And that's kind of like, I like to see it as writing like real life, because those things do happen.
Yep.
Sometimes behind closed doors, or sometimes the barn doors are blown wide open, but they're in our everyday.
Right.
Have you ever had some kind of wanting or desire to write anything fluffier or rom-com or something formulaic, or that's just like, no way, that's not me, I'm never going to go there?
I have to tell you, my wife asked me once, can you just give me just one romance? Just write me a romance story. And I said, okay. And that was actually the very thought of you. Okay. And that is as romantic as I can get it. Could write it without some drama being in it. Okay. That's as fluffy as I get.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll have to read that one again. Yeah.
And I'm pretty
sure I've read it, but I can't. I actually remember, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I actually remember the books that are a bit different, not the formulaic ones. So I remembered more your book, Cold and Lonely. That one was very impactful, and I will remember that one for forever, just because it was a bit different. And
it definitely was. I mean, it delved into a part of the world that is very present, that people don't realize that it's on the underbelly, right?
Right. Yeah. The
And
underbelly. Yeah.
it does go on, and there are terrible people, but some that doesn't mean that terrible people don't have the capacity to love in their own fashion because they've been created or they just choose to be the way they are. But I found that book, I think, to be almost, I don't necessarily write graphic sex scenes unless I feel that they're necessary to the story. But this book, because of the way it was and the story written the way it was, the language, the scenery, even the lovemaking was totally different, I think, in many ways than what I had written before. But that's the exciting part of writing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know that. You
Yeah.
both know that because you've written so many fantastic books that they're all different, they're all different and we love them all in their own way. But yes, this one was totally different, I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
stood out for me, that's for sure.
Well, good. What's the most challenging thing about writing for you?
The most challenging thing is continuing. I think that sometimes you start writing and you can just go on for hours and hours and hours. But as I mentioned earlier, life gets in the way. Sometimes you have to be somewhere. Sometimes you have a meeting to go to. Sometimes you're expected on a family function. There's always something. And I find that is the thing that upsets me. But at the same time, I realize that I have to stop, but I don't like it because I can just keep on going because you're just on that roller coaster and you don't want to get off. But that's,
Right.
yeah.
Well, you're a better person than me. I tell you, my wife, it gets irritated because I don't stop, when I'm like in the role and I'm like, stop, don't bug me for just give me another half an hour.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So do you try to write daily or are you a binge writer?
I'm kind of a binge writer. I wish that I could write daily. I honestly wish I could make the time, but as I said, I have responsibilities. I have places to be, things to do, and that's unfortunate. But writing is a love that that's always going to be with me. So I find the time somewhere along the way. Yeah.
So, building tension, you're very, very good at it. Any sort of tips or tricks for how you build tension in your story without giving away too much?
Let yourself go.
Okay.
Just let it rip. Usually, if you really let a story go, I think sometimes people are afraid to let go. You just let it go, and you'd be surprised what comes out. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's in between. It just happens.
Let it go. Okay.
Okay. What kind of conflicts and complications are your favorite to write about?
The bigger the better. I mean, honestly, the bigger the better because those kind of things give you so much, like meat, right? To draw from, it can go on so many different directions. Somebody once asked me, well, you don't tie up loose ends. I said, well, life doesn't happen that way.
Right.
It just, some ends, you never know what happened or how they were resolved or not. But those big explosive moments can make the difference in everybody's life and they impact so many people. And they are, I think, the best part of drama.
That's interesting. That's true. Life doesn't have nice, neat packages. Although, readers, particularly romance readers, really like, you're right. They really like you to tie everything up in a nice, neat bow and
Yeah.
not have any questions at all about if the two main characters are going to make it and be happy forever. That's interesting. Life, you're right. Life doesn't tie things up. How much research do you do for books? Does it depend on the book, or are you kind of a person that just loves to do research?
I find that the things that you write about are best when you experience some of them. And I say this in a big context. For example, the places that I write about, are easy for me to write about because I've been there.
Okay.
I see the architecture, I see the nuances of a street, I know the smell of the food, the colors, even the colors make such a big difference. In this particular story, I know you remember the cherry blossoms. It's an incredible time, and it's beautiful, and not many people know that it's there, and it's so simple. But yeah, I think you can best write about the things that you know, the things that you've seen. Obviously, you have to read more and you have to delve more into, finding out. And through technology, it's so easy to, to find out a detail that you may not remember. But yes, I find that's that makes it easier for me, and that's what I draw from. It's places that I've been. For the love of a woman, I was actually living in Venezuela when all that happened. I changed the names, of course, but all those things were very much were happening at the time.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say that you put a lot of your personal experiences or life experiences in your books.
Yes, but I don't want to say everything that I write about I've experienced. I want to just clear that up a little bit. But yes, I mean, I do. There's sometimes there are emotions, there are feelings, there are things that happen, and that you can just put a little bit of what you lived through and then expand and expand. And like I said, it just grows. It takes a life of its own. It makes it much easier. It makes it more personal.
So you've said things take a life of their own. So I'm going to guess you're probably a pantster. Is that right? You're not a plotter? Or are you a combination?
I write by the seat of my pants. Absolutely, by the seat of my pants. I have no idea where it's going. I just hope that it lands well, and just everything else that falls in between, honestly.
Yeah. Do you find certain triggers give you information on scenes or a plot line for a book? Is there something that you've seen or you've heard that says, that might make an interesting book?
Absolutely. I got the name The Very Thought of You, the book that I was telling you, the fluffy one, from a song, The Very Thought of You. I love the song, so I figure that's a great title. And she asked me for a love story, so okay, I'm gonna write it. That's a great title. And I love my titles. I think titles are super important. They sometimes inspire, or you read something in a book, or you hear something on a TV show, or you hear somebody say, yeah, everything is, I say everything is fair game for you as a writer to use and to expand on, and to show somebody else that they probably haven't seen or heard of. So
yeah.
You do have very good titles. I struggle with that. I have a hard time with titles and I have a hard time with the synopsis. I'm terrible at both. I never know what to call my books and I never know how to describe them.
Right.
Yes, pantsters. We're all pantsters.
Yes.
I'm a
definitely.
pantster. Allie's a pantster. You ever I find that being a pantster, I don't think it's easy to be a co-author with somebody else when you're a pantster. For some reason, Allie and I have made that work. Have you ever considered writing with another author?
I've tried a little bit, and I have to tell you, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare because, when I was going on an upswing with my story, they didn't feel that it should go the way it should. And it was in some ways frustrating. And I mean, no, I don't think I could. I mean, anything, I love challenges, and if possible in the future, I might want to. But I always tell my editors, in the front where I start, I want to apologize in advance. That's what I say. Honestly, I do. I want to apologize in advance because this is like a baby to me. So I'm going to fight you every step of the way, and, thank you at the end profusely. But yeah, I'm apologizing in advance for everything I'm going to do.
Okay. What is your perfect writing environment like? Do you listen to music, or do you have a particular window you look at? What is your best environment for working and writing?
No, I don't necessarily like to have any music going on or anything. I have my own space that I have 3 walls of books. There's books on 3 walls of this room, and they're just books. And it makes me feel good. I love the smell of books. I love touching them. I love the smell of them, and they're all around me. And it's like there's so much to draw from. So yeah, I have my own space. I need that. I just can't. People take their laptop and they can write anywhere or jot it down in a notebook. It's hard for me to do that. I need honestly a space that I create, and mostly the only thing I can do with out of my space is perhaps create the skeleton of my story. That sometimes I can do because I can just jot that down anywhere, but no, there's a designated space for me to write in for sure.
Yeah.
So I can control everything.
Yeah. So can you give us any sort of hints on what you're going to be submitting to Affinity? What the stories are about? A little preview.
I have one that I'm not sure on the title of, but I'm pretty sure that's the second one. But the one that I'm sending first is my first one, which is The Seduction of Laura.
Seduction of Laura.
Ah,
And tell us a little bit about this.
This is the story, my first story that I ever wrote, that kind of like I had seen some things on television and some stories, and they just couldn't get them out of my head. I said, you know what, I'm going to write it down. Once upon a time, I tried writing, and while I'm in high school for a summer or something like that, and I just kind of left it. And then this story was inside me that I just had to get it out, and I just began writing and didn't stop until I finished it. And I think that was the hardest story for me to write. It was the hardest for me to let the characters go, because it's like, as writers, that when you write these stories, you're living with these characters each and every day. It's like, that's just the way it is. So it was, I found my sexuality while writing this book.
Huh?
I found, but again, I want to just clarify that none of the scenes necessarily that I lived through. It's fiction, people. It's fiction, but it made me really see the good and what is possible, how people can, when they have something and they don't value it, or they're just not capable of accepting it, lose it, and how love changes you for the good and the bad, and how you find that love inside, that for another human being that you never considered, that all of a sudden you wake up in the middle of the night and you're kissing this woman and you're like, what? Honestly, really, and so it's very dear. It was very special. Like I said, I found myself in that time in my life questioning so many things and taking the time to get out of my compartmentalized life and fly. I allowed myself to fly, and everything just went everywhere. So yeah, that's why I hung on to it.
Yeah.
It was kind of mine, you know what I mean? And just mine, and I wanted to keep it that way. But I think it's time that I can let it go.
That's good. When you said the what, I just kissed a woman, I just flashed back to 40 years ago when I was first, coming out. And, I don't know about other people, if everybody goes through that sort of freak out, probably I would say youth of today probably don't as much as maybe we did years ago, 40 years ago, and I'm in bed with a woman and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm in bed with a woman, you sort of, and I had a little mini freak out. I don't know if that ever happened to you, Allie, or if you were always so sure about your sexuality. I know that I definitely wasn't, not in my early 20s. It was a freak out for me. Yeah. It's interesting.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, is there any other last minute things you want to share with the audience who is going to be watching this later on? Anything else you want to share with us?
I hope that you love the book. I hope that you let me know. I want to thank the readers for always being there, for the ones that didn't give up on me when I was gone for 5 years. I hope that these new characters are something that you enjoy. I hope that I give you more angst and more insanity. But I want to thank the readers. I really do for always being there and the kind words. Um, I always love that. I always like to hear back. And sometimes, they don't like it, and that's okay because I'll take the time and I'll talk to you back and forth until you say, okay, well, maybe it's possible. I still don't like it, but I get where you're coming from. But yes, always and forever, I want to thank the readers for sure.
Yes. Allie, anything last things you want to share?
Nope. If I can just do a selfish promotion. I had my latest book, the fourth in the Cast Iron Farm series, The Sky People, came out in audio yesterday. So hopefully people will start listening to that. I did get some good feedback on it already. I always get quick feedback when I make somebody cry. And,
yeah, that's it. It's a great series. You have one more book coming, right?
Yeah, it'll be out in February.
Yep. Yeah. Good. Okay, very good. In closing, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe, please. Later this month, we will be introducing a brand new Affinity author who will have her debut book come out sometime next year. I'm not quite sure. Her name is Mia. And now I've forgotten her last name, but we'll be chatting with her later in November. And I want to thank Anne Gardner, and I'm really happy that you're back writing again. 5 years was a long time to wait for your next novel, and I'm probably one of those that was very patient.
Well, thank you, Annette and Allie. I feel like really honored to meet you this way because I get to see you and talk to you. You are both incredible writers, and one day I hope to be half as good as you.
Oh
So
my
thank
gosh, you're
Yeah.
more than you're bypassed me years ago. You bypassed me.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yep.
thank you very much.
Keep them coming.